Hey everybody, talking about climate change tonight and specifically abrupt climate change. Most folks have heard of regular climate change, I suppose you could call it. Al Gore, Naomi Klein, Michael Mann, all scholarly people who have tried to warn the public that climate change is going to be really bad. But if we use science and technology and our creative thinking and the good nature of human beings, that we can turn this around and everything will be okay. We just have to start now. Whereas abrupt climate change folks say, yeah, we've been saying we should start now for the last 20, 30 years and we haven't done anything. So what makes you think we're going to start this time? And also that this might be out of our control now, that the climate system has gotten so out of whack that the natural forces of the climate system feeding on itself are going to be stronger than the efforts of mankind. Um, Not just in terms of going carbon neutral, but actually having to do carbon sequestration past the point of carbon neutrality. So we're talking about not only stopping polluting right now, but also having to take some of our previous year's emissions and put them back in the ground. So it's like turning the clock backwards versus just stopping polluting right at this very moment. So, what are the ideas that are driving that school of thought? Because most of us are familiar with the day after tomorrow, by Al Gore, the movie This Changes Everything by Naomi Klein, the book about how to revolutionize the economy so that it's a green economy, and also the hockey curve stick by Michael Mann, which shows that we can only put so much more carbon in the atmosphere before the temperature becomes uninhabitable. But for those in the abrupt climate change camp, folks like Guy McPherson, Paul Beckwith, I know there's a few others, they're basically saying, I guess Guy McPherson is probably the most extreme out of them, saying that there's no way at all you can do this. And kind of Paul Beckwith kind of falls in between Guy McPherson and, say, Al Gore, that this is really, really, really bad. Maybe there's something we can do, but this is really, really bad. So I think really at the end of the day, I probably fall in the Paul Beckwith camp, which is that this is really, really, really bad. But maybe there's some creative loopholes. But I wouldn't put my money on it. I mean, you're talking about methane feedbacks in the Arctic that could outpace human carbon emissions within 10 years. You're talking about gigatons of carbon being released just from the melting permafrost. Um, and what are the two most common things that people think of when they think of climate change? Well, it's temperature rise and it's sea level change, but really, I don't think it's going to be either of those two things that would do us in if we got to that point. I think by far the scariest thing is the breaking down of the jet stream because, that is the conveyor belt of energy around the globe. That's what feeds our crops. That's what keeps land habitable in terms of not being too much on the side of drought or on the side of flood. So, if you lose the weather regulator of the earth, I mean, I think that's probably going to have far more implications than sea level rise and everyone being a little bit warmer, because now you're talking about things that farmers really need to depend on, which is consistent weather and consistent climate. And that's why we do have some of these really crazy cold snaps and cold storms, because as the jet stream breaks down and you lose that regulation, you're just going to get more volatile and the swings are going to go up and down more. So you're going to get these crazy heat waves, and crazy cold snaps. So you're going to lose that medium, that jet stream that really keeps things well balanced. So losing that's pretty significant, and we are seeing that. Um, we're seeing the breakdown of traditional tornado alley in the United States, moving further to the south and the east and getting more tornadoes all at once, as opposed to having tornadoes spread out throughout the season. They're just, we have these big waves of them and then it's all quiet for a really long time, right? That's just the jet streams falling apart and not being able to deliver consistent weather. That goes beyond tornadoes. That just goes beyond your your high and low pressure systems getting flushed out across the United States every 5 or 6 days in a typical scenario. But now we're kind of losing that. We're not seeing systems move through the U.S. In the same period of time. So things are getting stuck. Systems are getting stuck, and it's either a heat wave that's just stuck over one area for a really long time, or a cold, rainy area that's stuck over an area for a really long time. And so, you start adding these up, or you look at one of them individually and everything's fine. You can have a government, print a little more money to offset the issue, issue some bonds, or insurance companies can step in, but it's all looking at it from the framework of capitalism and the economy. And obviously, I try to stay neutral, I guess, in that political, economic realm because, I do enjoy investing and, it's fun and it's nice to make money. But at the same time, we do have this problem sort of looming. And, um, you know, I think regardless of economic systems, we are an expanding population on a finite planet, and that's going to be problematic regardless of your political, socio-economic system, which is this that you go past your carrying capacity. So that's just real simple algebra. It's not really something that's of opinion, it's just sort of looking at the basic math. Um, so that's kind of where we're at, and it's definitely scary, and it's progressing really quickly. So, my final thought is always, do you have kids? Do you have offspring? Once you know this, and I think ultimately that's your own decision to make. Um, Historically, people have had kids during times of trouble. There's sort of this added weight in modern times of the internets of knowing everything, that we know that every human we add to this planet is problematic in terms of resources. So, there's that sort of guilt as well. Um, but at the same time, I know it's probably the thing that most people say is the most significant and impactful and beautiful thing that happens in their life. So, and as you get older and systems break down, you might want you know young people there to support you. So I see both sides. I mean, for me personally, I would imagine I won't have kids knowing all this. It's just not something that I feel comfortable with. But I understand if people do, you know, that then that's what it is. But I think at the end of the day, it is good for people to know this information and make an educated decision about how they want to live their lives going forward. And that maybe we don't all have 80 years. We have great medical and great technological advances happening, but um, you know, energy and technology are two different things. If you don't have the energy available, be it from the jet stream or fossil fuels or just resource depletion in general, the technology is built upon the energy. It's not the other way around. You need the energy to run the technology. You don't need the technology to run the energy necessarily, or at least as advanced as it is now. So, with all that in mind, it is good to keep in mind sort of the primitive mindset of humanity, and that we did come from tribal settings and that sort of thing, and that we might sort of be going back in that direction, assuming that the planet is still habitable and not polluted to the point of radiation and carcinogens everywhere. So we'll see how it goes, but it's a very depressing topic. But at the same time, it's better, in my opinion, not to have the head in the sand and just be honest. Give the situation an honest appraisal. I think it might hurt more in the short term, but in the long term, it will help you develop a compass in terms of which direction you want to go. So, no right or wrong decisions, no good or bad decisions in terms of how you live your life and what you decide to do, in my opinion. I'm pretty liberal and open-minded in that sense, but certainly worth contemplation so that you can do what resonates most with you.